coming up on Bridge City News. The city makes plans to reopen its 4-year budget. Plus, the family of snowbird Jennifer Casey speaks out for the first time today since the tragic crash this past weekend. And Canada's public health experts now recommending Canadians wear non-medical face masks in public.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thank you for joining us. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer says the new recommendation that Canadians wear non-medical face masks in public will help the country reopen and, quote, add another layer to how you go out safely. Dr. Theresa Tam says Canadians should wear masks in public when they can't ensure proper physical distancing. Some countries have made wearing face masks mandatory in public, but Tam says such a rule wouldn't work Canada-wide. She says local health officials may choose to make the recommendation for face masks mandatory in their own jurisdictions.
Wearing non-medical masks has always been a protecting others from if you're infected. So it's always you protecting others. And so at the beginning, it was about people who have symptoms, who should wear a mask. If you say in the home setting, on an airplane, if you found someone who is sick or going, you have to go to the clinic or something, then the sick person should wear the mask. Now here, you're considering, if you think about it, if you're in a community where there is actual transmission of the virus, just consider everybody as potentially being that sick patient, because you can't actually tell, right? So that's the change, is asymptomatic people could potentially be infected.
The province is increasing public health measures for travelers returning to Alberta from outside Canada. To prevent the spread of travel-related COVID-19, travelers arriving at the Calgary and Edmonton international airports from outside the country are now required to provide an isolation plan when they arrive. Travelers must fill out a provincial questionnaire detailing where they'll be isolating, how they will travel to their isolation location, their plans for getting food, medications, and other essentials. Those without adequate transportation will have access to on-site temporary quarantine. These measures will also be implemented at the provincial checkpoints and at the Coots border crossing as part of Phase 2 of the relaunch.
International travel obviously played a key role in the spread of the novel coronavirus. We live in a world of unprecedented mobility. More people have greater access to international travel than at any time in human history. And almost everywhere that the virus took hold, the initial cases mainly involved international travelers. Countries that most successfully avoided severe outbreaks, like South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan, closed their borders from COVID-19 hotspots weeks before Canada did, months in some cases. As late as mid-March, when the number of reported cases globally was surging to over 100,000, with hundreds of Canadians and dozens in Alberta, hundreds in Canada, I should say, and dozens in this province, federal border and airport security protocols remained lax.
There are some economic recovery plans in place with the city of Lethbridge. For one, the city will reopen its 4-year budget in the fall, and they also plan to create a councillor-led committee focused on long-term economic recovery. The idea behind reopening the budget is to take into account the additional funds spent this year on the COVID-19 response and possible side effects of the province restructuring their own budget due to the pandemic. Both items on council's agenda were voted on unanimously by council members on Tuesday. More details are coming out about the assault in Galt Gardens over the weekend. BCN spoke with 2 members of the community who say they know details about the victims and the assault, but feel nothing is really being done about it.
It was after that I found out that what the attending officer had said to the people that were assaulted, that were witnesses there. It was very rude, very degrading, with profanity from the officer towards the people to disperse. His method of explaining, his words, his actions were despicable. I have made attempts to try and be diplomatic And however, from the news that was given by the other media last night, no doubt it was influenced by the police, who are downplaying it.
I don't know the circumstances, so I can't speak to involvement of the police or others, but it just seems to me that we are not quite as quick to react if we know it's a homeless person, or we think it's a homeless person. We tend to dismiss them as not having the same value.
The Lethbridge School Division presented the preliminary operating budget for the 2020-21 school year. The budget is showing a revenue of $132.5 million, which is a $1.445 million decrease from the previous year. The superintendent of schools for the Lethbridge School Division, Dr. CHERYL Gilmore, says that most of the cost covers maintenance for the schools in the division.
What we have to keep in mind is that we had the 3.5 million class size removed, and our increase in revenue for the upcoming 2021 school year is primarily in the area of plant operations and maintenance, which is facilities, things like minor repairs and maintenance to facilities, caretaking, your heat and your electricity and so forth.
93% of the costs for the division are covered by the provincial government, and the rest of the 7% covers school fees, grants, investment revenues, and one-time reserve funds. It's National Physiotherapy Month. Local physiotherapists are back in business and making a big impact in the community. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly spoke with some local clinics about navigating during COVID-19 and what's also so special about this profession.
Physiotherapy is part of Phase 1 of the Alberta government's economic relaunch. I stopped by Peak Physical Therapy to see what it's like being a patient and navigating the new normal. After immediately sanitizing, I was asked to fill out a COVID-19 related questionnaire. Then, following one-way arrows, I was instructed to wash my hands and put on a mask. The office was also pretty quiet.
We are scheduling fewer patients per hour so that the therapist has the time to spend just one-on-one and limit how many people are in contact with the patient.
Physiotherapists treat a variety of patients, but you may not know that they're also on the front lines of the pandemic.
It was physiotherapists who actually discovered one of the treatments for COVID patients in the hospitals was doing the prone lying, because our job is to get people moving, so even people with lung conditions.
In honor of National Physiotherapist Month, Lyme Health and Wellness also shared their passion for the profession.
We do want to make a difference in people's lives, and I think having a worldwide pandemic just underscores what we do as physical therapists in our profession to improve the quality of life for people in terms of their activities of daily living. That's what spurs me on, is to help improve the quality of life for others.
This is what I love.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Thank you, Ainsley. Galbraith Elementary School and Panago Pizza North have partnered together to give their elementary students a free pizza today, and all they're asking for is a non-perishable food item to be brought by families to go to supporting the Interfaith Food Bank. As MICAH QUINN explains, Panago and Galbraith are happy to be able to bring a little bit of light into the kids' lives during this time of COVID-19.
Each volunteer behind me is a teacher at Galbraith Elementary School, and they are here to welcome their students and partner up with Panago Pizza North to provide each student a free pizza lunch.
Well, we have an amazing partnership with Panago Pizza North that we partnered with them a little earlier in this year for a school fundraiser, and they reached out to us and had an amazing opportunity to support our students and our community in this time of the pandemic. And so they reached out and had an idea, and we did some collaborating, and they came up with the idea of giving our students a hot lunch.
Tyslow says they received a lot of good reaction from parents and family about the event.
Well, we posted information on this event on our Facebook page, on social media, and the website, and we got a lot of traffic on there, a lot of parents saying thank you to Panago North, and a lot of parents reaching out and saying how grateful they were for the support.
Panago Pizza North was also happy to join up with Galbraith to give back to the students.
Galbraith is an amazing community. We had an opportunity to do a fundraiser with them this year, and we loved the school spirit that they had, their community. It was just awesome. And you know, we're grandparents, and we know how much our grandkids are missing their teachers. We thought, what a great opportunity for us to give back to the community, not only by allowing the teachers to come and see their students, but to give them a hot lunch, and also to ask those parents that are coming and bringing their children to donate to the Interfaith Food Bank in Lethbridge here.
The Interfaith Food Bank is accepting one non-perishable food item from the students and parents in order to get their pizza. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. A lot of people are talking about the new normal after COVID-19. Part of that transition for many Southern Albertans is the farmers market. It will be open this weekend. Exhibition Park has laid down some guidelines to ensure the safety of its visitors.
It will be similar to a grocery store. I mean, we need to limit the amount of people that are in at one time. And while they're in the facility, they need to keep their appropriate distances at all times. Of course, with concerns about product, etc., there will be no sampling at the market, at least until further notice. And this is all, I think, what people are familiar with in terms of the way things have rolled out over the last number of months. And it's, I guess, what I'll call our new normal for now. And that's the model that we're going to adopt for our market as we launch here on Saturday.
You can visit lethbridgefarmersmarket.ca to access a map of all the vendors so that you can plan your purchases ahead of time. Ravi Zacharias, who spent his life defending Christianity through books and lectures, died Tuesday. He was 74. Zacharias had been battling sarcoma and died at his home in Atlanta. He was a leading figure among Christian apologists, a branch of Christian theology that defends Christian doctrines against objections.
It's a great loss to the Christian community that Ravi has passed away. But at the same time, he's left a mark on many, many people's lives. I love the way in which he was able to bridge the gospel with good thinking. And he initiated and began Ravi Zacharias Ministries. And the interesting moniker of their website is to help thinking people believe and help believers to think. And I think that speaks really well to his character and his life. I was honored to be in the audience at my commencement program at Trinity Divinity School, and Ravi Zacharias was the commencement speaker. It was quite an honor, and he was an alumnus of Trinity and well respected in that community.
Zacharias is survived by his wife Margie, daughters Sarah and Naomi, son Nathan, and 5 grandchildren. Lethbridge College is ready to help the agriculture industry after receiving one of the most significant applied research grants in the college's history. The college was awarded one of just 6 new technology access centers across Canada by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada on Tuesday. The $1.75 million 5-year renewable grant will be used to create the Integrated Agriculture Technology Center, which will help farmers, growers, and food processors across the country. Canadians heard from the family of Captain Jen Casey today. Casey, a military public affairs officer, died Sunday when the Snowbirds jet she was a passenger in crashed in a Kamloops, BC neighborhood. Casey has been hailed as a kind and devoted friend who loved her job and was proud of her Nova Scotian background. Her family says the Snowbirds Operation Inspiration was an important mission that seemed to be designed for her. It was part of the cross-country tour designed to lift the spirits of Canadians struggling during the COVID-19 pandemic. In a statement, her family says there was no better person than Jen to carry out a mission to make Canadians happy in a time of uncertainty. A criminal law firm in Edmonton is sounding the alarm over an extreme backlog in the Alberta court system caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Liberty Law has written a letter to Premier Jason Kenney and provincial health and justice ministers. They note courtrooms are suited to physical distancing and they are calling for them to be reopened immediately. Court of Queen's Bench announced last week that hearings will be restricted to urgent matters until at least June 26. Criminal jury trials and jury selections are to be adjourned until September. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says he's working with the Edmonton Oilers on a proposal to be one of 2 hub cities for an impoverished NHL playoff scenario. Kenney says he expects to be discussing the issue later this week with League Commissioner Gary Bettman. The league suspended its season in February due to COVID-19. Kenney says Edmonton would be a prime location given it has low COVID numbers and a new downtown rink with a hotel attached to provide an isolation-safe zone for players. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says Parliament needs more sittings to monitor government. The House of Commons has been holding tri-weekly meetings, 1 in person and 2 remotely. But the parliamentary pause is set to expire on Monday unless the 4 main parties agree to extend it. Scheer says with the current limited operations of the House, the Liberal government is escaping accountability, and with COVID-19 related restrictions loosening around the country, he wants more regular sittings with fewer MPs instead of online meetings.
Now, no one is suggesting that all 338 members of Parliament show up next week. But I strongly believe that we can continue to do our jobs in the House while still respecting public health guidelines. Last week, Conservative members of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs published a report outlining the Conservative case for continued parliamentary democracy. Justin Trudeau has made it clear that he would like to permanently replace Parliament with press conferences. He wants an audience, not an opposition. That is absolutely unacceptable. This is not a partisan issue. This is about whether or not a democratic country like Canada should have a functional parliament. If members of the Bloc or the NDP or the Liberal backbench don't believe that Parliament is an essential service, they should consider why they ran for office in the first place.
And Scheer isn't the only one. With Monday's deadline coming, other party leaders are debating on how Parliament can work.
Our proposal is still in the works, but what UK is doing is allowing a rotation of MPs to come into Parliament virtually, and that way we make sure that everyone has access. The principle that we would want to operate on is that everyone or MPs are not limited from their access to representing their constituents.
And I feel that the easiest solution is making a strong and trustworthy agreement to go on as we do now. But if we do not, it's pretty easy also to be here 5 days a week, but in a very limited number.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, however, says he's open to the idea of a hybrid model for the House of Commons to resume business during the COVID-19 pandemic. The plan would see some MPs physically in the chamber while others participate virtually. Trudeau says it would allow MPs from every corner of Canada to participate, not just those who live in the Ottawa region.
The important thing that we have seen over these past weeks is that our Parliament continues to function. We've been meeting 3 times a week, twice virtually, once in person, to ensure that MPs from right across the country continue to be able to share the concerns of their constituents.
Well, we've definitely had some rain over the couple last days, and more is on the way. Complete weather details are coming up right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here's a look at our weather for this Wednesday here in Lethbridge. It is raining and it is cloudy. We could actually see a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm as well. Up to 5 to 10 millimeters of rain is expected today. Same for tonight. There's a good chance of rain overnight and into tomorrow. A chance of rain as well. We could see 5 to 10 millimeters of rain tomorrow as well. Today's high 14, overnight low 7, into tomorrow 12 degrees, and into tomorrow evening 4 degrees with also a chance of rain. So it's going to be a rainy week, as you see, as we even progress into Friday. There's a 60% chance of showers on Friday as well. High of 11 degrees, and then into Saturday there, 14 degrees with the increasing clouds there. Lots of clouds on Saturday. A mix of sun and cloud though on Sunday with a high of 20. High of 22 on Monday with the partly cloudy skies, and clouds on Tuesday are expected with a high of 21 degrees. So as we look at those temperatures, we see they are certainly rising. The average highs for this time of year, 19 degrees. Average lows, 5. The high temperature on this day was back in 64. It was 29 degrees. And the chilliest day was in 1987. It was -3. The sun rose this morning at 20 to 6, right at 5:40 a.m., and it will be setting this evening at 9:16 p.m. Look at all that sunlight that we are getting these days. Pretty exciting. Now let's take a look at what's happening across the country today. Weather-wise, over on the west coast, rain expected in Victoria and Vancouver, high of 17 degrees for both of those cities. Mix of sun and cloud in Edmonton with a high of 16 degrees. Calgary could see a 60% chance of showers today as well with a high of 12 degrees. Saskatoon could see a chance of rain as well. There is a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm there as well with a high of 23. High of 27 expected today in Regina. Mainly cloudy skies. There is a slight chance of a shower there as well. Now let's take a look at the east here. Lots of sunshine happening in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Highs of 18 in Toronto, 24 in Ottawa, 23 degrees is the high in Montreal. And Atlantic Canada looking pretty good today as well, as we've been seeing so much yucky weather out there. It's going to be beautiful under the sunshine. Fredericton's high 22, 16 is the high in Halifax, 12 in Charlottetown, and a mix of sun and cloud. There's actually a 40% chance of showers over there in St. John's, Newfoundland today with a high of 5 degrees. There you go. That is your Wednesday forecast.
Today's weather highlights are brought to you by Dan's LA Carpet Cleaning. Residential and commercial carpet and furniture cleaning since 1989.
Finance Minister Bill Morneau says Canadians depend on large companies, and Ottawa's new COVID-19 loan program for Canada's largest corporations is there so they can stay open and keep employees on their payrolls. Morneau says the government has taken steps to protect Canadian taxpayers and to make sure they share in any upside that borrowers see in the economic recovery.
Last week, we introduced the Large Employer Emergency Financing Facility that will provide large firms with the liquidity to get through to the other side of this crisis and will protect Canadian jobs. Today, I'm here to announce that the application process is now open. Funds will be delivered through the Canada Enterprise Emergency Funding Corporation, a subsidiary of Canada Development Investment Corporation, CDEV, in cooperation with ISED and the Department of Finance. Large employers that have a significant presence in Canada with an annual revenue of $300 million or more, with financing needs of $60 million or more that have not been met by their usual means can apply. To further protect Canadian taxpayers and to make sure that they share in any upside borrowers see in the recovery to come, we'll be asking publicly traded companies to issue warrants that provide the option to purchase equity or receive cash equivalents, totaling 15% of the amount received.
Stats Canada says gasoline prices plunged by 39.3% last month, the largest year-over-year decline on record. Falling energy prices helped push April's annual inflation rate down 0.2%, slightly more than economists' expectations of 0.1%, according to financial markets data firm Refinitiv. However, Stats Can reports prices for other consumer goods were up, particularly for cleaning products, toilet paper, and food. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 112 points to 14,997. The Dow was up 369 points to 24,575. The S&P 500 was up 48 points to 2,971. And the Nasdaq was up 190 points to 9,375. Oil was up $1.56 to $33.52 per barrel. Natural gas was down 5 cents to $1.78. Gold was up 12 cents to $1,748.30 an ounce. Silver was unchanged at $17.56 an ounce. Wheat is at $2,348 per metric ton. Barley is at $236 per metric ton. Canola is at $473 per metric ton. And corn is at $229 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 38 cents to 99.78. Feeder cattle were down $1.43 to 127.70. Lean hogs were up 23 cents to 57.05, and the Canadian dollar was down on the day at 0.7193 US.
Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Canada's chief public health officer is stressing that a face mask should not replace other measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19, like physical distancing, hand washing, and staying out of public places when you can. But Dr. Theresa Tam is now fully recommending that Canadians wear non-medical face masks in public whenever they aren't able to keep their distance from others at all times. Coming up after the break, we hear from author Chad Stewart as he discusses his new children's book. Stay with us.
As parents, most of us are happy if we can find books or movies that are family friendly and inspire our kids to engage and to be creative. Well, today's guest is someone who's creating books just like that. Chad Stewart is the founder of the Devonfield Company and author of an exciting new book called Britfield and the Lost Crown, the first in a series of 5 novels, and you can check out this book online at britfield.com. So Chad, welcome to Bridge City News. Can we start off by giving our viewers a quick snapshot of your book?
Sure, and thank you, Paul. I'm talking to you from sunny San Diego, California. So yeah, Britfield and Lost Crown, it started as a concept about 10 years ago. I was in Boston, Massachusetts, in a whole different field. I was an investment banker when I got the idea. So it's taken 10 years to come to our launch in August of last year. It took me about 4 years and 2,500 hours to write it. So we officially launched in August last year. It's nationally launched, and it's just had extraordinary impact. We've scored a 9.03 out of a scale between 1 and 10 across all our demographics. Our youngest reader has been 7. Our oldest reader has been 93 years old. And we've had 12-year-olds that have read the 384-page book in about 5 hours. So we are just really getting started. So.
Wow, that's great. Now, you mentioned the age range there, 7 to 93. Who is the book aimed at primarily, and what kind of feedback are you getting? You've won some awards, I understand.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things real quick is it's a fast-paced adventure novel. Book 1 takes place in England. It's about Tom and Sarah, 12 years old, and they're 2 orphans that are trying to escape from Weatherly Orphanage. And what's great about the book is it's anchored in reality, number one. It's about family and friendship. That's really the main core through the whole book. And it's also educational. And I think it's perfect not just for students or young adults or even 8, 9, 10-year-olds, but it's great for parents. I think half our reading audience are adults. About 55% of our audience are adults. So yeah, since we launched it in August, we've already won over 27 national and international book awards. We just won 3 more book awards yesterday. I was going to show you this real quick, some of our awards, if you can see that. So we're just amazing. It's exciting. We won gold place, first place gold medal for Parents' Choice Award. We won gold medal first place for Mom's Choice Award. So this is just a great book, obviously not just for kids and students, but for families and for parents and even the homeschool market. We also have a 83-page study guide. So Britfield can be taught in the school or at home, chapter by chapter.
Oh, that's excellent. Our 13-year-old read it, and he said it's one of his favorite books, and he's a bookworm, reads a lot of books. So, I mean, again, you say this is actually more than a book. It's more like a movement to promote literacy and creativity. And you've been on a tour through a number of states here visiting schools. Now, how do you actually present this to schools? I know there's a workbook, a study guide that comes with it, right? And how are students, teachers, and parents responding to this tour?
It's been incredible. We launched it last spring, and our objective is to get to about 40 or 45 states within the United States. So far, I've driven 9,000 miles, 18 states. I presented at over 150 schools in front of almost 30,000 students. Our usual audience is anywhere from 200 to 300 students for an hour. So it's been amazing. I mean, it's everything from private schools, Christian schools, Catholic schools, to public schools, to Title I public schools. We did 4 public Title I public schools in Dallas back to back. So it's been amazingly received. The audience is incredible. It's everywhere from 4th to 8th graders. And believe it or not, I can keep them excited and engaged for an hour presentation. I come on it as an award-winning author, which is great and exciting. I talk a little bit about Britfield, but I really talk about creativity. I talk about the importance of creativity. I talk about reading and story and having an idea. And I really kind of try to push that we're all creative. We're all born creative. Which makes us unique individuals. Creativity is fun. It's exciting because so many kids, unfortunately, are kind of being put in a box at school. And if they don't fit that model, or if they're not good at math, or all these other required testing, they don't feel that they're gifted or they're special, or they're unique, or they're worth anything. And so I really try to instigate that with the schools, and the kids are excited. That the teachers are getting excited and re-energized. With our study guide, I'd say out of all the schools we've been to, almost 20 to 25% have already adopted the Britfield study guide into their reading curriculum and have ordered books. There was one Christian school in Spokane, Washington, of all places, that back in December they ordered almost 50 paperback books so they could teach Britfield this spring. So that's kind of our long game. Our long game is to really impact, just not in the United States, and eventually Canada. Love Canada, and I love the Canadians. Just as a shout out. But is really to get Britfield into the reading curriculum and getting some of that other nonsense or agenda riddled books or novels out of the classroom, and get something like Britfield and Lost Crown in there, a book that's about family, values, education. It's fun. We like to call it stealth education because a child will read this and they'll learn about history, geography, art, culture, architecture, literature. All these wonderful things are in Britfield as they're reading it, and they're reading this fast-paced adventure novel.
I'll tell you what, I'm just nodding my head going, yes, this is what we need. I know there's parents, viewing this across Canada going, yes, this is what we need more of. So Britfield.com, check out the book and tell your schools about it. Now, I know you're getting great feedback from Christian schools. You mentioned that you also did some presentations in public schools. What's been the response from a secular school?
That's a great question, and it's interesting. And I'd say about 40% of the schools that we come into are secular or just public schools. But the difference is I'm just coming in as an award-winning author, and I'm talking about creativity. And for us, we know that creativity is a gift from God. It makes us unique. But so when I'm talking about it, that's what I'm thinking. But what student or school or teacher doesn't like the idea, like, yeah, creativity is good. So we're not having any problem getting into the secular schools at all, even the top private schools. We've been in Catholic, Christian, private, homeschool. We've been to a homeschool group. We were at a Muslim school in Dallas, 200 Muslim students. We've been to Jewish schools. So we've kind of been across the board. I mean, really, for me, it doesn't matter where the school is, or what's the demographic or the background or anything, because we're just coming in with a wonderful message. We're there to inspire students. I love children. They're amazing. But, the big question is are they different in a top public school in California or a Title I school in Louisiana? I was in Louisiana for a week, and there's no difference. The kid, especially at that age, between 10 and 12, they're excited. They have wonderful questions. They're engaged. I mean, just some of the best questions I get are from the 10-year-olds. You get these zingers out of left field, and you're like, wow. It's like I haven't heard that. It's brilliant. So they're just amazing. Kids are kids. It doesn't matter where they are, what the background is, how they were raised. Kids are amazing, and so we're giving them a great book, Britfield and Lost Crown, to read, to inspire, to educate, and we're also transforming the entire reading audience. So many kids have been engaged in the games and the computers and all this other social media and all that other stuff, and we're actually inspiring the next generation of readers. There's so much more to it, and like we say, it's more than a book; it's a movement. It's a movement in creativity. It's a movement in literacy and reading, and it's exciting. So
it is. Now, this COVID-19 pandemic has probably put a bit of a damper on your school tour, but you believe this crisis is going to transform both education and business. So how do you see this affecting education?
Yeah, and real quick, I was actually in Memphis, Tennessee, because we had a 5-month tour planned. I was in Memphis, Tennessee. We were going to continue up to Ohio, all the way up to Maine, all the way down to Florida. And it was the first week in March when I was doing 4 schools, 2 schools back to back, Monday, Tuesday, and we had to turn around and drive all the way back to California. So it has been massive, and it's transformed a lot of things. I do think a couple things. One is I think we're on a fast road to recovery. I think, especially speaking from the United States, I think we will come back stronger as an economy than we've ever been. I think we've got a great republic here. I think people are ready to get back to work, and I think a lot of good has come out of it. It's brought families closer together, which has been amazing. But let's talk about the education thing. I just saw a recent article that, and again, too, I had a working hypothesis 8 weeks ago, and I said, how is this going to change or transform education? Because what you're going to have is let's say you have 100 children that are coming home from the school system. And 3 things are going to happen. One is the parents are going to sit there and see some of the stuff that these children are learning, which is just horrific. everything from fifth grade, 5 years old up, whether it's sexual education stuff or all the other agenda that they're cramming down, this socialistic sort of mindset. And so that's going to shock the parents because they didn't realize it. Number two, they're going to realize in many ways, especially with the public system, how far their children are behind. It's like, I can't believe you're not reading this yet, or you're not doing this yet. And number three, they're going to see that, my gosh, everything he needs to do, he could do in 2 to 3 hours a day. I don't need to lock him up at some institution for 8 hours. So here's the numbers that just came out last week. Is they're saying 40% of all enrolled students will end up, once the lockdown is finished, will end up staying home and continue with homeschooling. 40%.
Wow.
So even if you cut that number in half and say 20%, that's massive. So if we have, let's say, 30 or 40 million children in school, at 20%, 40 million, that's 8 million children that won't be returning to the school system. That's profound, and that's going to have major impact.
Wow.
I have great admiration.
Yeah, thanks for unpacking that, just presenting that big picture to our audience, because, we need to ponder that. Is that something we should do as a family, right? There's a level of protection there, and again, a level of creativity unleashed here as well, and, more potential for your child to do more. And it may not be a fit for every parent, but boy, that's, like I say, that is quite profound.
I have such an admiration for the homeschool children and the parents. I mean, when I meet a homeschooler, they're well educated. I mean, they're well rounded. They've got great questions. They're smart. They're way ahead of the curve. And so I'm excited about this transformation and stuff. And I have admiration for teachers that are in the public or private school too. I really do. Some are extraordinary. Some are up against a hard bureaucracy. So I totally get it. But at the end of the day, I care about education and children and getting the best education they can.
You got it. Now, Britfield and the Lost Crown is the first in a 5-part series. So tell me, when is the second book coming out?
Yeah, so it's actually a 7-book series. We've extended it. So,
oh, wow.
So book one takes place in England. It's 384 pages, and we'll be still launching it, nationally and then internationally in the fall for the next year and a half. Book 2's already finished. Takes place in France. It's at 540 pages. We'll launch that next year, 2021. And as of 4 weeks ago, I'm starting to write book 3, and that takes place in Italy. Tom and Sarah are now 14 years old. So it's so exciting. This morning, I was spending about an hour and a half, before I get into my work day and my business. And so I try to carve out time. So it's a 7-book series. It'll be England, France, Italy. Book 4 will be in Eastern Europe and Russia. Book 5 will be in China. Book 6 will be in South America. And then book 7 will come back to the United States. And by then, Tom and Sarah are 18 years old. So we've really created, a huge story and a movement over the next 10 to 15 years. Every book will be followed by a major motion picture. So it'd be fun to bring me back at some point to talk about the movie.
Yeah. Well, you need to tell me, you've got plans for a movie. Now, that's a major project, right? Big money involved in that sort of thing. You got to get that together. And any idea as to when production would start on that? And is this do you see this as a DVD movie, or are you aiming to have this on the big screen?
This is a major motion picture. You figure around $120 million budget, but we'll be able to make it for about $40 million. And I think we're going to attract a lot of fun and A-list actors. We want just good actors, but I think we'll get a lot of wonderful actors. I mean, let's just say even like Denzel Washington, that just loves the book or the story, or his kids loved it, and they just come in just because they want to be a part of this thing. I do believe that Britfield Lost Crown will be one of the most anticipated movies and one of the most successful movies in cinematic history. So I'm making that prophecy here. And it's a type of quality that we need out there. And so many people complain about what's happening in Hollywood, and rightfully so. But instead of complaining, do something about it. You know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to do with Britfield Lost Crown. We're trying to offer an alternative. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Real briefly, there's probably young people watching too with this, pandemic underway. So any advice you have for a young person watching who aspires to be a writer or a movie producer?
Oh, no, absolutely. In fact, too, we're launching our first writing workshop. It's going to start in June, and it's a 3-week writing workshop. It's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays. So if you want any information about it, just go to our website, britfield.com, and email us at info@britfield.com. And we're filling up fast. It's great. And so it's a lot of exciting. It's me bringing 30 years of experience, everything from script writing and nonfiction to the Britfield series, consolidated into 6 hours. But it's going to be a lot. It's going to be very exciting. So I think 2 things about writing: write about what you know, and write about what you love. And it takes a lot of time. And it's like anything. It's like anything else. Writing's like a sport. Writing's like a profession. you know, as much time as you put in, as much is the quality that you'll get out. And if you want to be a writer and you're writing 1 hour a week, you know, how great is that going to be? It's like playing basketball. If you go out and practice 1 hour a week. So it's just, it's time, it's dedication, write about what you know, write about what you love. And a few final tips is it's really good to have a beginning and an end. Know where your book is headed. Your ending can change, but you need to know where you're going. I always look at writing as like a road trip. You know, I'm starting here in San Diego. I'm taking a 3-week road trip, and I'm driving to Boston. So that's great. I've got a beginning and an end. Now, where am I going to stop along the way? And those become your chapters, you know, as part of this journey adventure. So
That makes sense. Our politicians should pay attention to that too. But that's another story, another interview. I'm out of time. Thanks so much, Chad.
thank you all for having me. It's been wonderful.
Oh, that's great, isn't it? Chad Stewart, author of Britfield and the Lost Crown. I highly recommend it. Do check it out at britfield.com. Canadians have been both saddened and angered by the number of deaths that have occurred in our nation's long-term care facility during this COVID-19 pandemic. Why is it that so many centers are understaffed? What needs to change? Today's guest joins us from Edmonton, Guy Smith, president of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees. Guy, first of all, we want to acknowledge that the hard work and sacrifice so many healthcare workers are providing for us as they care for patients with COVID-19, of course, trying to prevent others from catching this virus as well. They're putting in a lot of hard work, right?
Oh, absolutely. We represent most of the workers in the private long-term care and obviously at Alberta Health Services too. And, you know, I like to call them heroes. And sometimes they say to me, oh, Guy, we're not heroes. We're just doing our job. And quite honestly, I think they're heroes because they are on the front lines of this pandemic. They're there because they care and they're working extremely hard and obviously putting themselves at risk as well. So in my mind, they're heroes, but they say they're just doing their job and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, I think we would all agree we need to salute them. Now, we've been hearing a lot about the problem of understaffing at our long-term care facilities and, of course, the multiple deaths occurring in elderly people in some of these centers. The province announced that they would be providing additional funding for the hiring of 1,000 additional full-time staff, and I believe that's also 1,000 students doing their practicums, and I think those are paid practicums this time. So a couple of questions. Have those staff already been hired?
Not as far as I know. I think the announcement was made fairly recently. What we're seeing is this government, they're making announcements, but they don't understand sometimes the complexity of actually putting those announcements into action. So as of yet, I'm not sure if those additional staff have been hired, the practicum students, but obviously that's a welcome move. There needs to be some help on the front lines. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The staff were working short before the pandemic, and as you can imagine, the workload and the intensity of that workload has increased. So more hands on deck is necessary, absolutely.
Yeah, where do you find the 1,000 people to, come on staff right away? I guess is a good question too. Now, are these hires just temporary for the duration of the pandemic, or are they going to be kept on afterwards as well? Do you know that?
I don't know that, but it's pretty clear that we need to have more permanent staffing in long-term care regardless. Right now, our members working across the province in long-term care mostly work 2, sometimes 3 jobs, part-time jobs, just to make ends meet and feed their own families. So there needs to be more stability in the long-term care sector. Alberta is a mosaic or a patchwork, if you like, of various private for-profit employers, private not-for-profit employers, and some Alberta Health Services sites as well. So it's a bit of a mess out there. And if nothing else, this pandemic has really highlighted the fact that there needs to be much more coordination, stabilization across the board, because we're supporting the most vulnerable, the elderly, and honestly, they need to get the best treatment possible. And quite honestly, in some of these private long-term care centers, they're paying a lot just to be there.
Well, that's true too. Now, there's so much that goes on in these care centers. I've had my parents in long-term care, for a number of years now, and my mom has since passed on, but my dad is still there. And you see the incredibly hard work that these people put in. Now, can you explain what kind of work health care aides do specifically, and why that is actually you know, we might say, oh, they're just healthcare aides. Oh, really? I've seen the work they do. Why is it critical
Yeah.
to the health of patients?
Well, I think anybody in a long-term care center needs to, feel cared for, supported, loved in some ways, and it's the healthcare aides look after their every need, their daily needs. Making sure that they're clean and fed, that their surroundings are clean and inviting, and also they're there as a hand to hold. They're there for someone to talk to. They're there as a consistent face and someone who is there to support to folks in long-term care. Sometimes they don't even get to see their own family, or they may not have family to see. Sometimes our members, particularly the healthcare aides, are there as part of their family, and that's a really important part. It's the physical needs, but it's also the emotional needs that these healthcare aides play a major role in. But as you mentioned, they're running from resident to resident. They don't have the time that they need or want to be able to do their job effectively and properly.
Absolutely. No, they are clearly understaffed. That's quite evident if you have a parent in one of these situations there. And again, sometimes it's, you're dealing with different kinds of situations. Some people can care for themselves relatively well. Other people have to, have their teeth brushed. They have to be shaved, combed, fingernails clipped. And there's incontinence. There's other issues there. You have to physically lift people sometimes. It's a lot of hard work. And again, they're just running big time. So I know there definitely needs to be more people hired. Do you know any idea what the proper ratio of healthcare aides per number of patients should be? I'm not sure what the actual target is right now, and how much that needs to go increased.
Well, there are no cookie cutter approaches to this. Obviously, there's different patients and residents with different needs, and obviously the more high acuity needs lower ratios of patients to staff. And this is one of the things that we've been calling for as a union for years: standardized ratios, staffing ratios, and rules for every employer to follow when making sure that they're hiring enough staff. There needs to be standardization and a certain.
So sorry to interrupt there, Guy. So you're saying that there is no standard. The government does not have a standard for that across the board?
There's no set standard. There are certain requirements for hours, if you like, hours of care, if you like, that each resident should be provided with by either a healthcare aide or a licensed practical nurse. And the thing is that a lot of these sites don't have enough staff to manage the number of hours of care required. So that needs to be standardized. That needs to be written into law to ensure that the companies that run long-term care centers hire enough staff to make sure that the residents get the hours of service that they need. And certainly those hours of service are less than you'd find in the public long-term care centers. And that's just because, unfortunately, these long-term care centers are run for profit a lot of times. So staffing is one of those areas where they cut back. And as I was saying, we've seen an increase in the profiteering and the privatization of long-term care, particularly over the last 10 years. It's really ballooned quite dramatically over the last 10 years. And we go in as a union and organize those workers. They see the need to be in part of a union, and that's when we really see the struggles of trying to make sure that our staff, our members are protected and that they get what they need. But quite honestly, it's been a struggle, and we've had a lot of labor disputes in long-term care over the last few years because of that.
Yeah, we've seen that. And I would agree that I think there needs to be some sort of a standardized, minimum that we need to be aiming for here across the board. Now, the government has also granted a $2 per hour wage top-up here for healthcare aides during this pandemic time. So has that kicked in already as well?
Well, when the announcement was made for the $2 top-up for healthcare aides, it was very unclear as to how it would be applied, which healthcare aides get it, in which facilities. And we're hearing now that it's not going to some facilities and it's going to others. We're also hearing from our members that some of the facilities it should be going to, their employers saying, well, no, you only get it if there's a COVID outbreak. Well, nobody knows what the rules are, and it's been really frustrating and confusing. But the other thing is, it shouldn't just be for healthcare aides. There's licensed practical nurses, and there's also support staff, cleaners and food service workers, maintenance workers, who are all part of that team that are supporting the vulnerable Albertans in long-term care. So it seems to have been announced without any sort of thought or analysis of how it would be applied. And that's another thing we've been pushing for, is the standardization of pay during this pandemic, at least, to make sure that there's a level playing field, because the rates of pay differ immensely amongst various long-term care centers, and so we believe it should be standardized like they did in British Columbia. What they did is they applied the same wage rate that you'd find in the public sector to all the private long-term care centers, and it's really helped stabilize their ability to provide the services, critical services that are absolutely necessary right now.
So they're saying that during the pandemic time in BC, they're saying, you know what, we're going to standardize this just to make sure they get the proper care in each center. So, okay, I can see that. Now, now LPNs, licensed practical nurses, can you describe the work that they provide in long-term care facilities? And is there also an understaffing issue there?
Yes, there's also an understaffing issue there, because the licensed practical nurses really are the clinical experts on the floor, able to assess a patient, able to deal with their medical needs, whether they're urgent or ongoing. Obviously, the healthcare aides play a role in that, and in terms of monitoring the residents and patients they're looking for, and maybe alerting a licensed practical nurse that somebody needs immediate help, or able to provide that analysis for them. But the licensed practical nurse is the clinical expert who would provide medical services and clinical services.
Okay. Another change has been the requirement for long-term care facility workers to only work at one site. And that's a challenge, because so many are part-time, as you pointed out earlier. They're working at several locations to make ends meet. So how is that turning out so far?
Well, it's really, the process is still in process. It's not complete yet, even though that determination was made by the Chief Medical Officer of Health quite a while ago. There was an attempt through a ministerial order from the Labour Minister to put it in place, with a deadline of a week ago, I think it was, to have it in place. There were so many problems with that they actually asked the unions to get involved to help them come up with a better plan, and that's been worked on, and a new ministerial order has been issued, but we still don't know when that is to take effect. And really, that needs to happen sooner than later. It's certainly a good move. We certainly support it. But as I was saying, when you've got workers working with 2 or 3 different employers, deciding which one to spend the pandemic time with is very challenging. And obviously, they're going to look at where they're going to be treated best, where the best pay and benefits are. I mean, who can blame them? They've got families to feed as well. And that's one of the reasons we say you need to standardize it across the board, so that workers aren't shopping around to figure out where they can provide their services during this pandemic. So the new ministerial order is a lot stronger. It's a lot clearer. And that's because the unions were involved in giving some advice on how it should come about. But as of yet, it has yet to take full force.
Right, yeah, I mean, something like that, I mean, just, practically thinking that through, it cannot happen just overnight. That's a lot of sorting out, I mean, where do people live, and how long does it take to get there, especially if they have to do transit in this pandemic time as well. There's all kinds of factors involved here, but hopefully there will be more full-time staff, and I mean, of course, there's a need for part-time as well, but and at one facility, I think that would be better basically for everybody, residents and patients and staff, right? So hopefully that continues down the line. Now, what about the new mandatory testing at long-term care facilities for all residents and staff? I mean, I'm guessing that maybe should have been in place sooner. Is that what you're thinking, or?
Yeah, it should be no surprise that really the front line of the pandemic, and where it's hitting the hardest, is the most vulnerable and the elderly who are in these long-term care centers. And we've certainly seen that across the country, and even here in Alberta. I think having that mandatory testing early on may have helped prevent some of those, outbreaks of COVID in some of the long-term care centers, and certainly maybe have helped prevent some deaths. The fact that it's now mandatory for staff and residents is good. And I do believe that staff have been redeployed from, Alberta Health Services, for example, to help do that. It's certainly, if you can catch it, if you can identify it before it has an effect, obviously prevention is much better than trying to find a cure, of which at the moment there isn't one.
Mm-hmm. Another issue that's come up is the importance of having the proper equipment to keep our frontline workers safe. There have been complaints recently about a shipment of face masks that weren't fitting properly and apparently causing some allergic reactions, interestingly enough. Have you heard back from workers as to whether that issue has been solved yet?
Well, we're constantly monitoring the personal protective equipment that our members have access to and how to use it properly. And that was one of the first things we did. Obviously, health and safety of workers and obviously patients and residents is the #1 priority. So we were in fairly lengthy discussions with Alberta Health Services about the protocol around using proper protective equipment and when to use it. And we were told that the supply chain was healthy, that there was enough supplies to see us through this. So we were a little surprised when a new supplier provided masks, surgical masks, that were having a negative impact on workers. And I believe that's been addressed now. Obviously I have staff that are supporting our members in that. I haven't heard any new problems with that, but when it comes to long-term care, we are hearing from staff that sometimes they don't have quick access to protective equipment. And I think that's, you have to use it prudently, right? But it has to be there when you need it. And I think, there's an important balance there, responsibility on both the employer to supply the equipment and the responsibility of the worker to make their assessment of when to use it appropriately.
Okay. I'm out of time here, Guy, but I'm guessing as far as your advice to viewers, if we want to see better staffing for our parents, grandparents, we need to be in contact with our MLAs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This issue obviously is front and center right now, is making sure Albertans are safe and healthy. But the whole issue of long-term care in Alberta will be an ongoing issue long beyond this. And I think, if nothing else, this tragic situation that we're dealing with has shone a light on something that we've been saying has been a problem for a very long time.
Guy, thank you so much for making time for us here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Take care.
You bet. Guy Smith, president of the AUPE. And on behalf of all of us here at BCN, thank you so much for watching today.